Sandy Allen and I talk about stuff. And you've caught me at quite an awkward time, I'm sorry. I'm busy nonce-proofing my house. Well, yeah, I know I don't have any children, but you never know, Cat Mahat may be around these parts. You know what he's like. Right, now that's everything done. Oh no, I've set off the traps!
A few moments later.
Oh, fuck this.
What the hell's going on here?
Can't you see? I've been trapped by my own boobies. And I think I might have pulled a muscle. I need a doctor. Not that one. Not that one. Not that one. Not that one. Not that. Wait a minute, what was that? Well, this can only mean one thing. Dr. Seuss has returned.
If you'd watched my original video concerning Dr. Seuss CDs, I took a look at The Cat in the Hat and Other Stories. And even though it can be a bit batshit in places, it's still a really enjoyable listening session. But that's not the only Dr. Seuss CD I have. I've also got this one. This came out in 2000, 5 years after the first one, and it's narrated by Edmondson's comedy partner, the late, great Rik Mayall. 4 funny favourites from the wacky world of Dr. Seuss with mad music and zany sound effects. Well, the last one was wild and crazy, so kudos to them for doing something different here. Well, the 4 stories on this are a really good selection, and they all go together surprisingly well. The Lorax, Dr. Seuss's ABC, How the Grinch Stole Christmas, and One Fish, Two Fish, Red Fish, Blue Fish. Which is funny, because the title of the CD itself is quite boring. It doesn't even say, insert title here and other stories. And its spine doesn't fit in at all with the others. You wouldn't think it was made by the same people. And what's that on Rick's head? Is that a book? Or 2 fish? Red fish. Blue fish. Dr. Seuss reference. And speaking of things on heads, I'm not quite sure what this girl here is doing with all these cats. Now, I used to own this on cassette, but then I lost it. I'm not sure what happened. I think it just got sucked into a black hole or something. But anyway, thank God for CDs.
Alright, first up, one of my favourite Dr. Seuss books, The Lorax. I'll always remember reading this with my learning assistant in primary school, along with I Had Trouble in Getting to Sulla Saloo, which unfortunately they didn't make an audiobook of. Fucking hell, this music is intense for a kid's audiobook.
If you cut down the tree, the Lorax, he will find you and he'll kill your family.
And if you think that's bad, just listen to the way Rick reads the story in certain places. We've barely scratched the surface of this.
At the far end of town, where the grickle grass grows, and the wind smells slow and sour when it blows, and no birds ever sing excepting old crows, is the street of the lifted Lorax.
Now, even though this is quite frankly rather horrifying for a kid's audiobook, it sets the scene excellently. Listen closely to the sound effects they use here.
And deep in the grickle grass, some people say, if you look deep enough, you can still see today where the Lorax once stood, just as long as it could, before somebody lifted the Lorax away.
Again, so much effort put into it when there didn't even need to be. You almost feel as if you're in this world in which the story takes place.
What was the Lorax?
Well, that.
And why was it there? And why was it lifted and taken somewhere, from the far end of town where the grickle grass grows? The old Onceler still lives here. Ask him, he knows. You won't see the Onceler, don't knock at his door. He stays in his lurkim on top of his store.
Let's face it, even if you did knock on his door, I doubt he'd even hear you, because he's all the way up there, and you're all the way down there.
He lurks in his lurkim, cold under the roof, where he makes his own clothes out of miff-muffered moof.
Whatever that is. Must be some kind of fabric. So I guess he's become a tailor now in his old age.
And on special dank midnights in August he peeks out of the shutters, and sometimes he speaks and tells how the Lorax was lifted away. He'll tell you, perhaps, if you're willing to pay.
Jesus Christ, Rik Mayall! Why did you say that in such a creepy voice? Come to think of it, why does everything look so empty here? Wouldn't more people want to hear about what happened to the Lorax? Shouldn't this place be like some big old tourist attraction?
On the end of a rope, he lets down a tin pail, and you have to toss in 15 pence and a nail, and the shell of a great-great-great-grandfather's snail.
First of all, where exactly do you find one of those great-great-great-grandfather snails? And how do you even tell how old a snail is? Do you just look at the shell or something? And why exactly does he want one? Well, in his defence, he doesn't really leave his house much, and he doesn't even have a garden.
Then he hides what you paid him away in his snub, his secret strange hole in his grovulous glove.
He's got a hole in his hand. He's got a hole in...
Then he grunts, "I will call you by whisper my phone, for the secrets I tell are for your ears alone."
What a creep this Onceler dude is. Whoa! The hell did they used to make that sound?
Down slops the whisper my phone to your ear, and the old Onceler's whispers are not very clear, since they have to come down through a snurgly hose, and he sounds as if he had smallish bees up his nose.
You might want to get that checked out, mate.
"Now I'll tell you,"
he says, with his teeth sounding grey,
"how the Lorax got lifted and taken away."
And he's got grey teeth. Disgusting. So we're off to the place where these trees are. And I really like the way they pull this off. It contrasts so well with shitty smog land.
It all started way back. Such a long, long time back.
way back in the days when the grass was still green, and the pond was still wet, and the clouds were still clean, and the song of the swommy swans rang out in space. One morning, I came to this glorious place, and I first saw the trees, the Truffula trees, the bright-coloured tufts of the Truffula trees, mile after mile in the fresh morning breeze. And under the trees I saw brown barbaloots frisking about in their barbaloot suits.
Suits? As in business suits?
As they played in the shade and ate Truffula fruits. From the ripulous pond came the comfortable sound of the humming fish humming while splashing around.
It genuinely makes you feel like this is some kind of paradise, and I love the way they presented it like that.
The touch of their tufts was much softer than silk, and they had the sweet smell of fresh butterfly milk.
He even reads it really calmly. Really great delivery.
I felt a great leaping of joy in my heart. I knew just what I'd do. I unloaded my cart.
Well, it was calm while it lasted.
In no time at all, I had built a small shop.
How can it take you no time at all to build a shop?
Then I chopped down a Truffula tree with one chop.
Well, I guess their trunks are quite thin.
And with great skillful skill and with great speedy speed, I took the soft tuft and I knitted a thneed.
And then comes the bit where the title character is introduced. And it sounds like a woman giving birth, albeit with less screaming.
The instant I'd finished, I heard a gazump. I looked. I saw something pop out of the stump of the tree I'd chopped down.
It's a boy!
It was sort of a man.
Close enough.
Describe him? That's hard. I don't know if I can. He was shortish and oldish and brownish and mossy.
He's orange.
And he spoke with a voice that was sharpish and bossy.
Okay, Rick, do your worst. I'm ready to hear your Lorax voice.
Mister, he said with a sawdusty sneeze, I am the Lorax. I speak for the trees.
He sounds like a witch crossed with an old teacher. And he goes so over the top with what he's saying, it's just really fun to listen to.
He was very upset as he shouted and puffed. What's that thing you've made out of my Truffula tuft? Look, Lorax, I said, there's no cause for alarm. I chopped just one tree. I am doing no harm.
Heh, that's what they all say.
I'm being quite useful. This thing is a thneed. A thneed's a fine something that all people need.
Is it now?
It's a shirt, it's a sock, it's a glove, it's a hat, but it has other uses. Yes, far beyond that. You can use it for carpets, for pillows, for sheets, or curtains, or covers for bicycle seats. The Lorax said, Sir, you are crazy with greed. There is no one on earth who would buy that fool thneed.
Yeah, no one's gonna buy that, fool! Reconsider your life decisions, fool!
But the very next minute, I proved he was wrong. For just at that minute, a chap came along. And he thought that the thneed I had knitted was great. He happily bought it for $3.98.
Quite a bargain, I'd say, for something that looks like a skinned chicken.
I laughed at the Lorax. You poor stupid guy. You never can tell what some people will buy.
You countryman.
I repeat, cried the Lorax, I speak for the trees. I'm busy, I told him. Shut up, if you please.
This Bunzler dude is a proper savage. Might as well call him the Twiceler.
I rushed across the room and in no time at all built a radio phone. I put in a quick call.
He's claiming to build houses and phones in quote-unquote no time at all. What a pretentious wanker.
I called all my brothers and uncles and aunts and I said, listen here, here's a wonderful chance for the whole Onceler family to get mighty rich. Get over here fast. Take the road to North Nitch. Turn left at Weehawken, sharp right at South Stitch.
Alexa, where's North Nitch?
Northwich is a town in the northwestern part of England.
That's not what I meant.
It is located 59.7 miles north of Birmingham, England.
Alexa, where's South Stitch?
Here's something I found on the web. According to jakearchibald.com, Southsea occupies...
And in no time at all...
Stop saying in no time at all! Of course it took some time. I swear to God, if you give me one more hyperbole, I'm literally going to die.
In the factory I built, the whole Onceler family was working full tilt. We were all knitting thneeds, just as busy as bees, to the sound of the chopping of Truffula trees.
What I like about this part is the way they sort of turn it into a percussive, rhythm. It's very slow and very monotonous, and I think that complements the humdrum working environment perfectly.
Now, chopping one tree at a time was too slow, so I quickly invented my super axe hacker, which whacked off 4 Truffula trees at one smacker. We were making fleas 4 times as fast as before, and that Lorax, he didn't show up anymore.
I don't like the way he said that. That's making me think he killed him.
But the next week, he knocked on my new office door. He snapped, "I'm the Lorax who speaks for the trees, which you seem to be chopping as fast as you please. But I'm also in charge of the brown Babaloots, who played in the shade in their Babalute suits and happily lived eating Truffula fruits.
What's wrong with them? Did they lose their suits?
Now, thanks to your hacking my trees to the ground, there's not enough Truffula fruit to go round. And my poor Babaloots are all getting the crummies because they have gas and no food in their tummies."
Do you think probably because they ran out of Truffula fruits, they went to this place instead?
Smiley's rest up. Eat here and get gas.
They loved living here, but I can't let them stay. They'll have to find food, and I hope that they may. "Good luck, boys," he cried, and he sent them away.
Is he trying to say that they died or went extinct or something?
I, for once, felt sad as I watched them all go, but business is business, and business must grow, regardless of crummies in tummies, you know.
That breath gets me every time. And now they return to the clever percussive rhythm thing, but this time it's a lot faster. Also, is bigger a verb? No? Well, it is now.
I meant no harm. I most truly did not. But I had to grow bigger, so bigger I got. I biggered my factory, I biggered my roads, I biggered my wagons, I biggered the loads of the fleas I shipped out. I was shipping them forth to the south, to the east, to the west, to the north. I went right on biggering, selling more fleas, and I biggered my money, which everyone needs. Then again he came back. I was fixing some pipes when that old nuisance Lorax came back with more gripes.
Literally gripes, as in colic. Rik just stands in front of the microphone and coughs and blows his nose and makes other disgusting sounds.
"I am the Lorax." He coughed and he whiffed. He sneezed and he snuffled. He snargled, he sniffed.
It's not hard, mate. Get a tissue.
"Onceler," he cried with a crapulous croak. "Onceler, you're making such smogulous smoke. My poor swammy swans, why they can't sing a note. No one can sing who has smog in his throat."
Oh no, more sadness. The Lorax then sends the Swami Swans off saying,
"Where will they go? I don't hopefully know. They may have to fly for a month or a year to escape from the smog you've smogged up around here."
And just like with Fox in Socks, we're thrown into an ASMR.
"What's more?" snapped the Lorax. His dander was up. "Let me say a few words about Gluppity Glup. Your machinery chugs on day and night without stop, making Gluppity Glup, also Schloppity Schlop."
Also, I've never quite understood what that brep brep thing is. It sounds like a clown car.
"And what do you do with this leftover goo? I'll show you, you dirty old onceler man, you." You're glumping the pond where the humming fish hummed. No more can they hum, for their gills are all gum. So I'm sending them off. Oh, their future is dreary. They'll walk on their fins and get woefully weary in search of some water that isn't so smeary. I hear things are just as bad up in Lake Erie.
Dr. Seuss is fucked up. I don't like him anymore. Also, for any confused Americans watching, I know that last line was actually cut from the original American publications for being in bad taste. But they kept it in for the British and Irish versions because chances are a lot of us aren't really up to scratch in our American geography.
And then I got mad. I got terribly mad. I yelled at the Lorax. Now listen here, Dad. All you do is yap yap and say bad, 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 bad. Well, I have my rights, sir, and I'm telling you I intend to go on doing just what I do. And for your information, you Lorax, I'm figuring on biggering and biggering and biggering and biggering, turning more Truffula trees into fleas, which everyone needs. And at that very moment, we heard a loud whack. From outside in the fields came a sickening smack of an axe on a tree. Then we heard the tree fall. The very last Truffula tree of them all.
I just don't know what to say here. That was depressing as hell.
So the Onceler's family all fuck off back home because they can't make any more thneeds. And the Onceler talks about how depressed he is now.
Now all that was left neath the bad-smelling sky was my big empty factory, the Lorax, and I.
Again, I'm speechless. I can't even think of anything funny to say. I don't really feel like crying today, Rik.
The Lorax said nothing, just gave me a glance, just gave me a very sad, sad backward glance, as he lifted himself by the seat of his pants.
Now this part, despite being in the midst of a really depressing part of the story, I have rather a funny memory of. Given that I grew up in
London Underground, London Underground, we're all lazy fucking music.
To make the rhyme scheme work in this part, my learning assistant would always pronounce pants as pants, and it made her sound flamboyant and extravagant, but also extremely arrogant.
And I'll never forget the grim look on his face when he hoisted himself and took leave of this place through a hole in the smog without leaving a trace.
Hold on a minute. The Lorax is the one sending the animals off. Well, we know he means they're dying. And he goes off into the sky. So the Lorax is basically God.
And all that the Lorax left here in this mess was a small pile of rocks with the one word, unless.
But literally the sentence before said he left without a trace. Surely that is a trace of some sort.
Whatever that meant, well, I just couldn't guess. That was long, long ago, but each day since that day, I've sat here and worried away, Through the years, while my buildings have fallen apart, I've worried about it with all of my heart.
Jesus Christ! I'm literally speechless, which explains why I'm talking. Rick, why did you say that in the way you did? You're meant to be reading funny, nonsense poetry, not giving a eulogy. We do not give eulogies to children. Think of the children, Richard!
But now, says the Onceler, now that you're here, the word of the Lorax seems perfectly clear. Unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, nothing is going to get better. It's not. So catch, calls the Onceler. He lets something fall. It's a Truffula seed. It's the last one of all.
He managed to keep that all those years on. Awesome. I guess he's not the villain anymore.
You're in charge of the last of the Truffula seeds. And Truffula trees are what everyone needs. Plant a new Truffula. Treat it with care. Give it clean water and feed it fresh air. Grow a forest. Protect it from axes that hack.
Hypocrite!
Then the Lorax and all of his friends may come back.
But I can't guarantee it. I'm suddenly really depressed right now. And then they want to follow that up with Dr. Seuss's ABC. You can't! You can't just ignore everything that happened literally a second ago and then go,
ABC. It's the easiest 1, 2, 3. Now this is perhaps my favourite of these audio performance things. I actually remember the first time I listened to this. I was standing next to my cassette player in my bedroom, which was on top of my chest of drawers, and as I was only about 6 and therefore quite short, I had to stand onto a chair to listen to it properly, so I know I'm definitely going to enjoy this.
Big A, little A. What begins with A?
Arses, the Egyptian pharaoh.
Aunt Annie's alligator. A.
Looking at this picture, I was always baffled as to how this alligator could carry the weight of this woman plus a bloody fucking armchair. How does he not break his back, eh?
Oh, and speaking of breaking your back, let's move on to the letter B. Now that is a sound you really don't want to hear coming towards you in a dark alleyway.
Big B, little B. What begins with B?
Bloodshed and butchery by the sound of it.
Barber, baby.
I've just realised now, as I'm making this, they recorded this in 2000, so that baby they recorded is now the same age as me. I feel a bit sick now.
Bubbles,
Whose idea was it to record Rik Mayall farting in the bath?
and a bumblebee.
And they let a bee loose in the studio.
Big C, little C. What begins with C?
Cock! Sorry, I have a problem. I'll stop being immature now.
Camel on the ceiling. C, C, C.
Oh, I like that reverse effect. That gives me an idea. Let's see how it sounded before it was reversed.
So
yeah, we're off to a pretty good start. Let's see what the letter D has in store now. Yeah, when I first listened to this, that snore was, well, rather terrifying. Comes completely out of nowhere and it's really loud.
Big D, little D. David Donald Do dreamed a dozen donuts and a duck dog too.
Wonder what that dream means, eh? We all know about falling and being naked and losing your teeth, but if you asked a dream interpreter about a Krispy Kreme 12-pack and a creature that's half dog, half duck, they'd probably think you were barking mad. Next up, Rik sounds like he's genuinely struggling to think of words that start with E here. And then he's happy with himself because he's just figured it out.
A, B, C, D, E, F, E. Ear, egg, elephant. E, F, E.
I'm liking this music.
Big
Makes you just want to get up and dance.
F, F. 4 fluffy feathers on a feff. A, B, C, D, E, F, G.
That music is so... It's like walking down the street feeling happy and then suddenly in the distance seeing someone you hate.
A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Goat, girl, goo goo goggles. G, G, G. Big H.
H! What was the point of that? Having some random people shouting in the background.
Little H. Hungry horse. Hey. Hen in a hat. Hooray! Hooray!
I'm not really sure about those sound effects overlapping. It doesn't really make much sense to me. And there you have Rik Mayall just being Rik Mayall.
Big I. Little I. I. Ichabod is itchy. So am I.
Not sure which one of them is Ichabod, but it's a totally bizarre name to call your dog.
Big J. Little J. What begins with J? Jerry Jordan's jelly jar and jam begin that way.
Sounds like Jerry Jordan jizzed in his jelly jar. Alright, what's next?
Big K. Little K.
What is it with this CD and strangely creepy music? First the Lorax and now this. But, thankfully, it's not like this for much longer. No, it gets much worse. The sound effects people inject themselves with Red Bull.
Kitten. Kangaroo. Kick a kettle. Kite. And a king's good.
Please don't be really loud. And after that, we have some more funky drums.
Big L. Little L. Little Lola Lop. Hello. Left leg. Lazy lion. Licks a lollipop.
Was that Bagpuss yawning?
Big M. Little M.
Okay, where are we now?
Many mumbling mice are making midnight music in the moonlight. Mighty nice.
Mighty nice? You sure? That was okay at best.
Big N. Little N.
What begins with those? 9 new neckties and a nightshirt and a nose.
What the fuck was that?
O is very useful.
Well, I guess he does have a point.
You use it when you say, Oscar's only ostrich oiled an orange owl today.
That owl looks strangely happy to be oiled up. Oh, and by the way, music snobs, could you tell me what rhythm that last piece of music was in? Because it sure as hell wasn't 4/4.
And now for another recap of the letters we've just gone over, complete with stupid percussion, and ending with Rik Mayall screaming as he plummets into the depths of hell.
A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P! Painting pink pyjamas, policeman in a pail, Peter Pepper's puppy, and now Papa's in the pail.
Dr. Seuss, poet extraordinaire, just rhymed pale with pale.
What dark and foreboding hell are we going to this time?
Big Q, little Qua. What begins with Q?
Questionable activity, that's what.
The quick Queen of Quincy and her quacking quackaroo.
Not much to say here. Next letter, please.
Big R, little R. Rosie Robin Ross. Rosie's going riding on her red rhinoceros.
I doubt you'd be able to ride one in real life. It'd probably chuck you off its back before you even got anywhere.
Bleh, serves you right.
Big S, little S. Silly Sammy Slick. Sipped 6 sodas and got sick.
How does drinking 6 sodas make you sick? The fuck's in those sodas? Poison.
T.
What's going on here?
What begins with T? 10 tired turtles on a tuttle tree.
Were they just recording the sound effects crew after they'd finished making this? I can well imagine they'd be tired, but we're not finished yet, with only 6 letters to go.
Big U, little R. What begins with U? Uncle Ub's umbrella. And his underwear, too!
Yes! Can we hear that again?
And his underwear, too!
That is the best sound effect I've ever heard next to the... from Classic Nursery Rhymes with Darren Day. Where could we possibly go from here?
Big V. Little the.
Okay, nice intro.
Vera Violet Vin is very, very, very awful on her violin. Ugh.
Yeah, is right, Rick. How do they even make that noise? You've got to be beating the shit out of a violin to achieve a sound like that. Or did they get a little kid to play it, perhaps? Hey, little Johnny, could you play this violin for me?
Oh, look, what is this? Is it a food? Is it a toy? Is it a... Oh, it made a sound! Oh, look at me, I'm a violinist!
W. Willie Waterloo washes Warren Wiggins, who is washing Waldo Woo.
Do you know, taken out of context, that could have very, very wrong implications. Just think, if you'd never read the book, or if you're blind, you'd probably think the illustrations was of 3 blokes having a bit of you-know-what in a shower. That's exactly the reason I'm including the illustrations from the books in these videos, is so I don't put disturbing images in your heads.
I'm not a homosexual, if that's what you're thinking.
X is very useful.
Yeah, no.
If your name is Nixie Knox.
Which mine isn't.
It also comes in handy spelling axe and extra fox.
I find it funny that they're playing a xylophone and that's not even mentioned in the text. What? What was that for? Was that how Rik felt after he'd recorded all that stuff?
Big Y, little Y. A yawning yellow yak. Young Yolanda Jorgensen is yelling on his back.
Seriously? You literally said yelling, not fucking yodeling. Should have put a scream in there or something.
Young Yolanda Jorgensen is yelling on his back.
And now for the final recap of the alphabet. And with it comes something majestic. Trust me, nothing will prepare you for this. It's like a church organ and a trumpet, and it sounds like a hymn or a national anthem or something.
A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, and Z! That's Z.
Yeah, you show 'em, Rik. Pronounce stuff correctly. Rule Britannia.
Big Z, little Z. What begins with Z?
Well, I guess you still have to keep the rhyme.
I do. I am a Zizzer-Zazzer-Zuzz, as you can plainly see.
Now, I don't know if you've noticed this before, but this Zizzer-Zazzer-Zuzz character, he's got yellow teeth. Ugh. Why is it that all the Dr. Seuss characters have such terrible dental hygiene?
Well, this is the end of part 1. I'm gonna have to split this one into 2 parts as well, just because, for the same reason as the first one, you know, it's too much to talk about in one video. So, I'll see you in part 2 then.
Going on up to the spirit in the sky, where I'm gonna go when I die. When I die and they lay me to rest, I'm gonna go to the place that's the best.
Hold on a minute, where's my head? First of all, where exactly do you find one of those great-great-great-grandfather snails? How do you tell how old a He's claiming to build houses and phones in quote-unquote no time at all. What a pretentious wank. It's not hard, mate. Get a tissue. It's so hot and sticky in this. Back a bit, there you go. Don't want it to fall on top of me. Alright.
It's really hard to breathe in this, and it's very tight around my you-know-whats.
My feet, you know. That's the you-know-whats I was talking about. Forgot to cross my eyes. So it's just stare at me.